I still remember that electrifying moment as if it were splashed in neon across my soul, the moment at my wife's birthday dinner when, amid the clink of glasses and murmurs of celebration, she casually called me cheap. In those first 100 heartbeats, every hope I had cherished, every sacrifice I'd made to build a life together, shattered into a cascade of disbelief, humiliation, and a searing, burning resolve. Her words, so casually cruel, echoed in the charged silence of that room and transformed my pain into a promise. I would reclaim my dignity, rewrite my worth, and leave behind a legacy that no one could dismiss. That night, as the laughter and chatter around me blurred into insignificance, I took her carefully wrapped gift, the one she had bestowed upon me with a mixture of mockery and pity, and walked out of that dinner with every step marking the beginning of my transformation. 4 years, I had believed our marriage was a partnership built on mutual respect and shared dreams. I prided myself on my hard work, the long hours I spent striving to provide for us, and the quiet sacrifices I made without complaint. I believed that my dedication and every dollar I earned were tokens of my commitment to a future we had once imagined together. A future where success, happiness, and love were meant to be shared. I'd invested time, energy, and emotion into planning special nights like this, where we could celebrate milestones and cherish our achievements. But that night, amid the warm glow of candles and the gentle hum of happy conversation, her careless remark shattered the illusion I had long held dear. It was a birthday dinner meant to honor her sister's recent promotion, a lavish celebration filled with the aroma of fine cuisine and soft music in the background. I had dressed in my best suit, feeling both proud and hopeful, expecting an evening of celebration and mutual support. Instead, as soon as our table was filled with relatives and friends, she made a comment, a dismissive, almost flippant remark that I was too frugal or cheap. The words, thrown out with a careless smirk, cut through the pleasant ambience like shattered glass. In that moment, I felt my identity, the very essence of my self-worth, waver under the weight of her scorn. I had always prided myself on being responsible, on working hard to ensure that our future was secure, yet here she was ridiculing my every effort as insufficient. The shock of her words plunged me into a deep internal struggle. I sat there, forced to confront a painful truth. The woman I had supported unconditionally, with every sacrifice and every bit of love I possessed, now saw me as something lesser. A man who was, in her eyes, not worthy of the finer things in life. I remembered all the late nights at the office, the times I skipped outings or postponed personal joys to provide for us, and now those sacrifices were mocked as mere miserly behavior. The humiliation was overwhelming, and as the dinner progressed, I could feel the eyes of some relatives shift, some sympathetic, others derisive. The festive mood had turned sour, and every clink of a glass seemed to punctuate the cruelty of her remark. That dinner, once filled with promises of future celebrations, had become a crucible of betrayal. I couldn't let the moment pass silently into the recesses of my mind. The gift she had given me earlier, an elegant, carefully wrapped box that symbolized both her affection and, paradoxically, her contempt, now lay before me like an emblem of everything that had gone wrong. It wasn't merely about the money or the gesture, it was about the deeper values of respect and love that had been so callously disregarded. I remember crumpling the wrapping paper in my trembling hands as my heart pounded in my chest, each beat a mix of sorrow and a rising determination. In the moments after the dinner, as I walked away from the reception, the cool night air brushed against my face like a wake-up call. I retraced my steps through the quiet streets, the neon lights of nearby shops flickering with indifferent normalcy, while inside me a storm was raging. I replayed the events over and over, each memory sharpening the realization that I could no longer remain passive. I had to take a stand, not just for myself but for the integrity of everything I had built. That night, every step away from the laughter and the empty platitudes was a step toward reclaiming my identity. I promised myself that I would not let this moment define me as cheap or unworthy. Instead, I would channel this betrayal into a force for reinvention, a drive to prove that my worth was immeasurable and that the sacrifices I had made were the building blocks of a far brighter future. I spent the rest of the night in a quiet cafe, ordering nothing more than a black coffee and a slice of humble pie, reflecting on what had happened. As I scribbled thoughts on a napkin, notes on the injustice, the raw hurt, and the glimmer of determination that was beginning to kindle within me, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could allow her words to break me, or I could use them as the catalyst for a radical transformation. The idea of leaving her gift behind, as an emblem of my rejected worth, morphed into a symbol of liberation, a token that I was finally stepping away from a life that no longer honored me. And so, as I left the cafe, the gift clutched tightly in my hand, I felt a mixture of sorrow and fierce resolve. I knew that this moment was the start of something new, a turning point that would lead me down a path where I would redefine success, rebuild my life, and ultimately become everything I was meant to be. In the days and weeks following that heart-wrenching evening, I found myself living in a state of constant flux, a turbulent mix of anger, sorrow, and a resolute drive to redefine my life. The shock of her leaving me for a man she deemed better had left my world in disarray, and I was forced to confront the reality of every sacrifice I'd made. Every day seemed to oscillate between searing pain and a simmering determination to rebuild. I began each morning with a heavy heart yet an unspoken promise that I would not allow her rejection to dictate my future. I spent countless hours alone, poring over memories and questioning where things had gone so terribly wrong, and what I could do to reclaim the life I had once believed was ours. At first, I isolated myself, retreating into a shell of brooding silence as I replayed every conversation, every missed gesture, and every subtle hint of her growing detachment. I examined the little details that now seemed so obvious. The way her eyes would sometimes wander during our dinner conversations, the furtive glances at her phone when I wasn't looking, the half-hearted explanations for her late work hours. These fragments, once dismissed as the natural ebbs and flows of a busy life, coalesced into a stark narrative of betrayal. I felt as though a curtain had been pulled back to reveal a truth I had been blind to, a truth that shattered the foundation of the future I had so carefully built. In the midst of this emotional storm, I resolved to take deliberate steps toward reclaiming my identity. I started by gathering every ounce of evidence from our shared life, photos, emails, and even old text messages that now painted a picture of neglect and unreciprocated effort. I began journaling with a fervor I hadn't known in years, the pages filling with raw honesty and deep introspection. Every entry became a confession and a promise. A confession of the hurt I'd endured, and a promise to myself that I would transform that pain into something powerful. I wrote about the long nights in the office, the countless sacrifices I had made for our future, and the profound sense of betrayal that now gnawed at my heart. With each word, I began to see that my self-worth wasn't tied to her shallow measure of what was better. It was intrinsic, built over years of perseverance, dedication, and the courage to dream big. That inner journey spurred me to reevaluate my career with a critical eye. I started researching new opportunities, networking with professionals and industries where my skills could truly shine. I reached out to former colleagues and mentors, those who had always believed in my potential, and their support reaffirmed that I was more than the sum of someone else's dismissive judgments. Every conversation, every meeting, was a stepping stone toward a future where I would no longer be overshadowed by the choices of another. I revised my resume, updated my LinkedIn profile, and began to apply for positions that promised not only a better salary but an environment that recognized real talent. I attended networking events, where I allowed myself to be vulnerable and share my story. I spoke about the betrayal and, more importantly, about the lessons I had learned and the strength I had found within myself. Those moments of vulnerability were transformative. They shattered the last remnants of self-doubt and replaced them with an unwavering belief in my own capabilities. As I began to rebuild my professional identity, I also restructured my personal life. I made a conscious decision to distance myself from toxic influences, people who had once made me feel small and unworthy. I reconnected with friends who had always been a source of unwavering support, and together we explored new avenues for personal growth. We spent evenings discussing literature, art, and philosophy, topics that helped me see that life was far more than material success or superficial validation. In these gatherings, I found solace and a renewed sense of purpose. I discovered that true friendship isn't measured by the accolades you receive but by the strength you share in times of hardship. In parallel, I sought professional help to navigate the tangled emotions that threatened to consume me. Therapy became a vital part of my routine, a space where I could unpack the layers of betrayal and learn to see my past not as a chain, but as a series of lessons that would ultimately make me stronger. I learned techniques to manage my anger and cope with the lingering pain. Over time, my therapist helped me to reframe my narrative, from that moment of crushing loss to a journey of empowerment and reinvention. I began to see that every setback was a precursor to a comeback, and that my worth was defined not by the choices of others, but by the resilience I summoned in their aftermath. Even as I forged this internal transformation, I remained vigilant about my financial security. I reassessed my budgets, scrutinized every expense, and restructured my investments to ensure that my future was insulated against any further betrayals. I set up additional safeguards for my finances, new accounts, diversified portfolios, and a rigorous system to monitor every transaction. Each small victory on the financial front was a concrete reminder that I was in control, that I was building a foundation that no one could tear down. The steady growth of my savings and the positive changes in my financial statements bolstered my confidence and provided a tangible counterpoint to the emotional upheaval of the past. Throughout this tumultuous period, I found a renewed connection to my creative self. I turned to writing as a form of therapy, channeling my pain and frustration into long, reflective essays that captured the essence of my struggle and the glimmers of hope that began to emerge. Late at night, I would sit at my desk, the soft glow of my computer screen casting shadows on the walls, and let my thoughts spill freely into words. These writings, raw and unfiltered, became a living archive of my journey, a testament to the fact that even in the darkest moments, creativity can be a powerful tool for healing. I shared some of these pieces on a private blog, and the overwhelming support from readers, stories of similar betrayals and triumphant recoveries, provided me with a sense of community and validation that I had long yearned for. As the weeks turned into months, a subtle transformation began to take shape in every aspect of my life. At work, I became more assertive and innovative, spearheading projects that not only challenged the status quo but also showcased my true potential. I started to receive recognition for my contributions, and the quiet admiration of my colleagues slowly replaced the echoing derision of the past. I took on leadership roles with a newfound confidence, and every successful presentation or project was a stepping stone toward reclaiming the respect I once lost. The professional world began to see me not as the man who had been dismissed, but as a visionary capable of steering the company to new heights. On a personal level, I embraced a lifestyle of disciplined self-care. My mornings, once a struggle to rise from bed, transformed into moments of empowerment as I laced up my running shoes and hit the quiet streets. The steady rhythm of my runs became a meditation, a reaffirmation that every step forward was a step away from the pain and toward a future defined by my own determination. In those solitary runs, I found clarity and a profound sense of liberation, as if the very act of moving forward was a metaphor for my internal journey of recovery. Each stride was a silent vow that I would no longer be held captive by the memories of betrayal. Slowly, as I continued to invest in myself, both emotionally and professionally, I began to see that the road to recovery was not linear, but a winding path filled with both setbacks and moments of breakthrough. I learned to celebrate small victories, a compliment from a colleague, a productive meeting, a new connection made at a networking event, and to let each one fortify my resolve. I started setting ambitious goals for the future, envisioning a life where my success would speak for itself, where I would no longer be defined by someone else's shallow judgments. Every goal I set, every new strategy one devised, was a declaration that I was reclaiming my power and forging a path that was uniquely my own. Throughout these months, I continued to document my journey meticulously. My journal became an indispensable companion, a place where I recorded not only the pain of the betrayal but also the gradual emergence of hope, resilience, and self-discovery. I filled its pages with reflections on what it meant to be truly independent, to stand on your own despite the weight of someone else's disappointment. Those entries, each one a raw testament to the ups and downs of my journey, served as both a record of my transformation and a source of strength that I could revisit whenever doubts crept in. By the end of these arduous months, I found that the person I had become was a mosaic of every experience. Every tear, every victory, every moment of determination had contributed to a new identity. I was no longer defined by the pain of her betrayal but by the strength and resolve that had carried me through. I had rebuilt my professional standing, restructured my finances, and, most importantly, rediscovered a profound sense of self-worth. The journey, though long and fraught with challenges, had been a necessary crucible in which my true character was forged. In the weeks that followed that fateful birthday dinner, I began to piece together the shattered remnants of my life with a steady, determined rhythm. I realized that the pain I experienced that night, those echoing words that branded me cheap, had ignited in me a fierce desire not just to reclaim my dignity, but to completely redefine who I was. Every day became a crucible in which I transformed bitter humiliation into the building blocks of my future. I threw myself into a process of introspection and reinvention that touched every aspect of my existence, from my career to my personal relationships, and even to the way I viewed myself. I started by reassessing what success meant to me. The nights I spent in my study, poring over my journal and scribbling down raw, unfiltered thoughts, became a sanctuary where I could finally understand that the value of a person is not measured by someone else's shallow judgment. I remembered the long hours I devoted to building a life of stability, every extra shift at work, every sacrifice made for a shared dream, and I realized that those efforts were not futile. Instead, they were the foundation of a strength I had always possessed, waiting for the right moment to emerge. I began setting new goals, ones that were solely my own, to innovate in my career, to cultivate relationships that were built on mutual respect, and to invest in a future where I was defined by my accomplishments and not by someone else's criticisms. At work, I channeled the raw energy from that painful evening into a relentless pursuit of excellence. I took on new projects with a fervor that surprised even my closest colleagues. Every meeting became a platform where I shared my ideas with renewed confidence, ensuring that my voice was no longer lost in the noise. I spearheaded initiatives that not only showcased my strategic thinking but also redefined the standards of success in my department. Slowly, the board began to take notice. The quiet man who had once been dismissed was now leading with authority. Each accolade, each nod of approval, was a powerful rebuttal to the hurtful words that had once made me feel insignificant. I remembered the sting of that night at the reunion, and it pushed me to work harder, innovate further, and ultimately rise to a level of professional achievement I had never imagined possible. Outside the sterile walls of the office, my personal life was undergoing a transformation that was just as profound. I began reconnecting with friends who had always believed in me, the ones who, even when I was too lost in self-doubt to see it, quietly admired my perseverance. We spent countless evenings talking over dinner and long walks, discussing our dreams and the hard lessons life had taught us. Their unwavering support reminded me that my worth was never truly in question. It was the lens through which others chose to see me that had been distorted. In these intimate gatherings, I found solace and inspiration. I learned that real friendship is forged in vulnerability and mutual respect, and that the opinions of those who had once mocked me were insignificant compared to the warmth of genuine connection. My journey toward personal reinvention also led me back to my creative roots. I rekindled a long-forgotten passion for writing and painting, activities that had once filled my soul with joy but had been pushed aside by the demands of daily life and the weight of betrayal. In the quiet hours of early morning, I would sit at my desk, letting the soft light of the rising sun illuminate pages as I poured my thoughts, fears, and aspirations onto paper. Each poem, each essay, was not just a form of catharsis but also a declaration of my renewed identity, a promise that I would no longer let anyone diminish my light. I even began sharing these pieces on a blog, where a small yet supportive community resonated with my words. Their messages of solidarity, filled with empathy and shared experiences, served as a powerful reminder that I was not alone in my struggle, and that every painful chapter could be rewritten into a story of hope and triumph. Financially, I undertook a thorough overhaul of my personal assets. I revisited my budgets, scrutinized every expense, and restructured my investments with a precision that reflected the hard lessons I had learned. I diversified my portfolio and set up safeguards to ensure that I would never again be vulnerable to impulsive decisions that might compromise my financial security. Each upward tick in my balance became a small victory, a tangible affirmation that I was now in control of my future. I even started exploring entrepreneurial ventures that were completely my own, projects that not only promised growth but also allowed me to channel my creativity and strategic vision into something transformative. Every new venture I embarked upon was a bold step away from the past and a leap toward a future defined by independence and self-respect. All the while, I kept an unwavering routine that balanced work, exercise, and reflection. My mornings became sacred rituals of clarity, rising early, lacing up my running shoes, and pounding the pavement in quiet, meditative solitude. Those runs were more than physical exertion. They were an affirmation that every step forward was a step away from the pain and toward a new beginning. In the stillness of dawn, with only the rhythmic sound of my heartbeat for company, I allowed myself to feel the power of renewal. Each day as I returned home with the first rays of sunlight warming my face, I felt a deep, abiding sense of hope that had been absent for too long. As the months progressed, I noticed a profound change not only in myself but also in the way the world responded to me. Colleagues who had once overlooked my efforts now sought my advice, and even distant relatives, whose dismissive glances had once cut deep, began to treat me with cautious respect. It was as if the very act of reclaiming my worth had reshaped the perception of those around me. I began receiving invitations to speak at industry events and participate in panels about overcoming adversity, opportunities that reinforced the reality that my story was one of resilience and rebirth. Every word I spoke was a testament to the strength I had discovered, a living example of how one can transform personal betrayal into a stepping stone for success. In the quiet moments between meetings and long days of work, I continued to nurture my inner growth through therapy and meditation. I learned to let go of the lingering bitterness that had once threatened to overwhelm me, replacing it with a calm, focused determination. My therapist guided me through the process of understanding that while the scars of betrayal might never fully fade, they could serve as powerful reminders of my capacity to endure and to rebuild. Slowly, I began to embrace the idea that my past, with all its pain and mistakes, was not a chain holding me back but a series of lessons that had prepared me for this very moment, a moment when I was in full command of my life. In these reflective moments, I also reconnected with my family on a deeper level. I sought to mend relationships that had been strained by unspoken hurt, initiating conversations that were both honest and healing. We talked about the old days, the mistakes made, and the ways in which we could all move forward with a greater understanding of what truly mattered: respect, honesty, and support. It was not an easy process. Old wounds often reopened and emotions ran high. Yet, over time, these conversations allowed me to see that forgiveness, both of myself and of those who had hurt me, was a necessary step toward a future of genuine connection. The transformation was subtle but profound. The very people who had once looked at me with condescension began to acknowledge the strength of my journey, and in their eyes, I saw a reflection of the man I had become, a man who had risen above the limitations of the past and was forging a path defined by his own unwavering vision. As the seasons shifted and a full year passed since that fateful night, I began to chart my future with a clarity and ambition that I had never known before. I developed a comprehensive plan that integrated my professional goals with my personal aspirations, a roadmap that not only aimed to secure financial success but also to create a legacy of resilience and innovation. I envisioned launching new ventures that would challenge the status quo, mentoring young professionals to help them overcome their own setbacks, and even writing a book that chronicled my transformation, a narrative that I hoped would serve as a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt diminished by betrayal. Every new milestone in my professional life was matched by a deep sense of personal fulfillment. I was no longer defined by the hurtful words that had once echoed in that birthday dinner. I had turned those very words into the impetus for my evolution. I began to see that my value was not contingent upon the validation of others but was inherent in my ability to rise, rebuild, and transform adversity into opportunity. Each successful project, every accolade, and every positive review was a declaration of my newfound worth. I was creating a life that was not only about financial stability or career advancement but about living authentically, with courage and integrity. Throughout this transformative period, I also dedicated time to celebrating my victories, both big and small. I organized intimate gatherings with friends and mentors to share my journey and to express gratitude for the support that had helped me emerge from the darkness. These celebrations were not ostentatious or lavish. They were simple, heartfelt moments of connection that reminded me that the true measure of success is found in the love and respect of those who know you best. We reminisced about the past, laughed over shared memories, and looked forward with a renewed sense of hope. Each toast, each warm embrace, reinforced my belief that even in the face of deep betrayal, there is a path to redemption and that every ending is merely the precursor to a new beginning. As I continued to forge ahead, I became increasingly determined to give back to the community that had, in its own way, supported me through my darkest times. I began volunteering with organizations that focused on empowerment and resilience, sharing my story with others who had faced similar challenges. Whether through speaking engagements, mentoring sessions, or simply one-on-one conversations, I sought to inspire others to reclaim their worth and to view their hardships as catalysts for growth. I learned that true strength is not just about personal success but also about lifting others up and helping them see that they too have the power to overcome adversity. With every passing day, my vision for the future grew bolder. I started setting long-term goals that combined my professional ambitions with my desire to create lasting, positive change. I planned to expand my business ventures into new markets, launch innovative projects that disrupted conventional norms, and even write a memoir that detailed the transformative journey from betrayal to triumph. Each plan was carefully crafted, every strategy meticulously designed, and every risk calculated with the understanding that my destiny was entirely in my own hands. I sought out partnerships with like-minded leaders and began building a network of professionals who shared my commitment to integrity, innovation, and resilience. The support I received from this community further reinforced the truth that I was on the right path, that my journey, as painful as it had been, was a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit. In the quiet moments before sleep, I often found myself reflecting on how far I had come. I would sit by my window watching the stars blink in the vast night sky, and feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey that had led me here. Every tear shed, every moment of despair, had contributed to a mosaic of strength that was uniquely mine. I realized that the betrayal that had once threatened to shatter my world had, in fact, been the catalyst for my rebirth, a harsh lesson that forced me to redefine success on my own terms and to embrace my true potential without apology. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a new era, one defined by relentless ambition, unwavering self-belief, and a vision for the future that is as expansive as it is inspiring, I am filled with an unshakable sense of purpose. I have transformed the bitterness of betrayal into a driving force that propels me forward, turning every setback into an opportunity for growth. My professional achievements are a testament to my determination, and my personal journey has carved out an identity that is resilient, authentic, and fiercely independent. I am no longer the man who was once diminished by harsh words. I am a leader, an innovator, and a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever been told they were not enough. In that final, reflective moment, I prepare to take the next bold step in my journey, a step that will see me launch a groundbreaking new venture, expand my influence in the industry, and continue to inspire others with my story. The road ahead is filled with uncertainty, but I welcome it with open arms and a heart brimming with courage. Every challenge, every triumph has led me to this point, and I know that I am capable of facing whatever comes next. I step forward, fueled by the lessons of the past and the promise of a future that I have the power to shape. My destiny is no longer defined by the betrayals of yesterday, but by the endless possibilities of tomorrow.